Huggy Wuggy is not as evil as you think. In fact, his hidden compassion towards us could potentially alter the outcome of Chapter 4. Throughout the first chapter of Poppy Playtime, it's clear that Huggy is the main antagonist. He stalks us and eventually ambushes us, leading to a thrilling chase sequence. Now, Huggy is easily the most popular character in the game, and, ironically, Playtime Co.'s most popular toy as well. But what if he isn't just out for blood as we've been led to believe? Well, there are indicators that Huggy's aggression isn't what it seems, and they reveal a deeper truth than you can possibly imagine. Huggy may have been getting controlled by another entity, specifically the prototype. There is a lot of evidence throughout all official material suggesting that this experiment could control or manipulate other toys. For instance, the original monster tutorial from the spin-off Project Playtime features a voice talking to Huggy, ordering him to stop the employees from making toy parts, even using force. Now, although the true identity behind this voice is unknown, it's very likely that it belongs to the prototype. A Chapter 3 VHS tape reveals that the prototype can mimic voices, but who's to say he couldn't also continually speak in a single voice? This is exactly what the voice from the monster tutorial does. So if this was the prototype speaking, he could have been using the same method to communicate with Huggy in Chapter 1, commanding him to lure the player deeper into the building and then attack. It's known that Huggy is the factory's security guard, confirmed in the Survivor tutorial from Phase 2 of Project Playtime. During the events of Poppy Playtime, the factory is long abandoned, so Huggy might see us as an unauthorized intruder just doing what he was originally taught to do. A tape from Chapter 2 states that he is very obedient. He was even standing in his usual position, as if the factory was still operational and he was performing his duties. Therefore, his hostile actions could stem from his original role as a security measure and not from something personal against our protagonist. Throughout the 3 existing chapters, we get more and more implications of the messed up things that Playtime Co. was doing to their experiments. This information is given to us through VHS tapes and documents, so Huggy's actions could be his way of trying to get us to leave the factory before we learn about the deep horrors that lie within. And when he chases us in the vents, maybe it's because he thinks we're better off dead instead of witnessing the terrifying secrets of Playtime Co. Since the Hour of Joy in 1995, the factory has been inactive. There were the resource extraction groups from Project Playtime who worked in the factory, and that game appears to take place after the massacre. But despite this, Playtime Co. has seen very little human activity for years. This isolation may have left the experiments, including Huggy, feeling lonely and abandoned. So when Huggy notices the player all alone and likely anxious, his aggression might actually be an attempt to communicate with us out of empathy. Although, considering he tries to slaughter us near the end of Chapter 1, this idea seems unlikely. Now on the other hand, here's a theory that's quite the opposite. Huggy could simply be angry because he's been alone for so long. Even though he participated in the massacre of the employees, which can be seen in the Hour of Joy VHS tape, he might not have anticipated how it would feel to be isolated from civilization for such a long time. Huggy's pent-up emotions might have driven him to take out his frustrations on something or someone. In this case, the player just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Thanks to a document from the orientation notebook, we know that Huggy was put through some cruel testing. It states that he could dent metal with a swing and had teeth sharp enough to split bone. This implies he was forced to bite and swing at objects with tremendous force, likely causing him physical pain. He probably endured other harsh tests as well. While Huggy was obedient to the employees, he almost certainly didn't want to undergo this testing, which probably caused him deep anger. So perhaps his hostility in Chapter 1 is a form of self-defense. The trauma he experienced might have resurfaced when he saw a human after so long, leading to his aggressive behavior to ensure he wouldn't be put through any more cruel testing. However, the true reason for Huggy's hostility could be because he feels lost and confused. Let me explain. So we know that some experiments didn't always go well. There was a Playtime Co. employee named Thomas Clark who, after being diagnosed with lung cancer, volunteered to be turned into a toy. After the surgery, he appeared disoriented and didn't remember anything. A similar thing could have happened during Huggy's surgery, but instead of completely losing his memories, they may have all just become a blur. Huggy might have fragmented memories of trauma, and all the emotions and feelings could have become too overwhelming when he saw the player, causing him to act out. This could also explain his obedience towards the factory's employees as well. I mean, surely, if he fully remembered what had happened to him, he would likely act quite the opposite towards the workers. So this is definitely a possible reason for how he acts towards us. Another possibility is that Huggy needed food. One of the the death messages in Chapter 2, when decoded, reveals the message, "They're just hungry." For more evidence, after all the corpses left over from the Hour of Joy were eaten, the toys had to start eating each other to survive. In the restricted disappearance tape from Mob's YouTube channel, we see what unfolded on a night when Huggy escaped the factory and killed a deer. Now, some might think he did this because he's simply a bloodthirsty monster, but it's likely that he was just hungry, as the secret death message implies. Considering how Playtime co-treated the experiments, it would make sense if they didn't feed them often. After years of abandonment, the factory may have been running out of smaller toys for Huggy to eat, so the player might have been his last resort to survive. Huggy's actions could also be the result of poor design or training. He might not even be aware of his own strength or the consequences of his actions. This is even more likely if he was made from an orphan child who lived in playcare, which he probably was. So maybe this explains why he was trying to scare and attack the player in the first chapter, because he was oblivious to his actions and didn't realize the results of them. But what if Huggy did have a personal reason to attack us? There is a lot of evidence suggesting that the player was involved in the factory's human experimentation. For example, when Mommy Longlegs says that we deserve to die alone for working there, it's likely that Huggy was made from one of Playtime Co.'s orphans. And if our player was a scientist in the factory, Huggy might remember the terrible things we had done to him and his fellow orphans. His actions could have been driven by revenge. First, he would stalk us to freak us out, and after his playtime was over, he would ambush us and finally take out one of the people who caused him such trauma. If this is the case, it could be argued that his aggressive behavior was justified, meaning he would be misunderstood. Now, going back to the restricted disappearance tape, we need to question why Huggy behaves the way he does in that footage. The obvious reason for him attacking the workers sent out to capture him would be self-defense. But why does he choose to run out of the factory anyway? It's likely he was either under the influence of the prototype or desperate to escape because of how he was treated there. However, there's still a noteworthy mystery. At the end of the footage, right before Huggy is captured, we see him standing outside a house. Why is that? It's commonly theorized that he was remembering past memories of having a family and living in a proper home before being turned into this huge blue monster. And that certainly is a possibility, a rather sad one. But it's also possible that he was protecting the house and its inhabitants. Perhaps he was so used to his duties as a security guard that he ended up performing these duties even outside the factory. However, I don't believe any of these possibilities are true. I think his intentions were far more sinister, but not because Huggy himself is evil. As we established, the prototype appears to manipulate other experiments. If this mysterious entity commanded Huggy to escape the factory, what if he did it to make Huggy cause harm? The orientation notebook implies the prototype has a natural urge to kill, so he could have told Huggy to cause as much death as possible, explaining why he killed the deer and 5 employees. When we see him standing outside the house, he may have been about to break in to murder whoever was inside. And maybe he was just standing there instead of trying to get in because he was staring at the security team driving near him. After all, this part of the footage took place during the exact minute he was recaptured. Clearly, the prototype wasn't happy about the experimentation, which is why he orchestrated the massacre at Playtime Co. So making Huggy venture out into the public may have been a way for people to see him and take photos and videos of a giant Huggy Wuggy toy walking on the streets. This would inevitably make its way to the news, forcing Playtime Co. to respond, with the truth likely being exposed. But what do you think about Huggy being an ally? Could his actions be a result of what he was tasked with all those years ago? Or is he an innocent creature who fell victim to the prototype's control? Let me know your theories in the comments below. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more Poppy Playtime videos just like this. See you next time.